right. Okay, welcome back. We're at the end of the book here. We got 2 chapters to go. We're going to finish it up. Welcome. It's been nice reading with you guys. We really enjoyed this book, so let's finish it up and see how it ends. I'm looking forward to it. Again, it is Dog Chronicles, Murphy Gold Rush, set in 1900 by Allison Hart. Thank you again to the Lebanon Public Libraries for assisting in getting us these books. Okay, chapter 14, Desperation. August 21st, 1900. Snow and mud flew from beneath my paws as I dug, desperately trying to get to Sally. I barked, hoping she could hear me. I plowed into the mound with my muzzle smelling for her. When I scented her jacket and I felt her warmth, I dug even harder. Finally, I found her arm. Grabbing her sleeve, I yanked, pulling until I could get a grip on the shoulder of her jacket. I tugged with all my might until I could see her head. I licked Sally's face clear of snow. Her eyes fluttered, and she tried to struggle upright. Her legs were still buried, and I clawed at the snow packed around them, careful not to scratch her. Once they were uncovered, I barked encouragement. Sally's lips were blue. She needed to move to get warm again. Holding on to me, she tried to stand. She winced when she put weight on one leg. I feared I twisted my ankle, Murphy. I need to make a splint. Grandpapa showed me how to fashion one like he had during the war. She took off her belt and slid off the sheath, the knife still in it. She secured the sheath to her ankle with her belt to create a splint. This will have to do, she said grimly. I stood next to her and she leaned onto me to rise. We have to get to Point Crossing and the mining camp before nightfall, she told me. Thank the Lord the snow has stopped. That at least is in our favor. Using me as a crutch, Sally hobbled along the river until we found a gentle rise up the bank. There we found a path trampled by animals and followed it. The sun peeked through the clouds and warmed us, but also made the snow sticky like the oatmeal I used to lick from Mama's bowl. Half walking, half hopping, and always leaning on me, Sally made her way. I could feel the exhaustion in her grip on my shoulder. I was tired too, and hungry. I did not know how far we had to go to reach Point Crossing. Before we had traveled easily by boat, plowing through the thick snow was slow going. Could we make it by nightfall? I don't know. Suddenly, Sally slumped down on a small hillock. Her cheeks were white. Undoing the belt, she rubbed her ankle. It was swollen under her legging. I can't go any further, Murphy, she said. Point Crossing is at least 2 more miles. Only I can't move another inch. My leg hurts so, and slogging through the snow is like walking in mush. Tomorrow we can go on. I pranced in front of her, whining, willing her to try. The feeble sun was dipping behind the horizon, the air growing sharp with cold. Sally's clothes were wet from her fall into the river. They would freeze stiff overnight. I didn't think she could survive outside with no fire. Pulling off her pack, she removed the blanket and oilcloth and wrapped herself in them. Then she slid down into the protection of the hillock, curled in a ball, and shut her eyes. I barked when she didn't move. Frantic, I raced around her. I had to do something. I couldn't build a fire. I couldn't drag her 2 miles. I could drape myself over to keep her warm until morning. Or I could go to Point Crossing and summon help. I hated to leave Sally, but I knew this was what I needed to do. I would run as fast as a deer in the snow. I would get to Point Crossing before nightfall and bring rescuers back to Sally. I knew which way to go. The river guided me, and without Sally, I moved swiftly. Before long, I smelled smoke. By the time I saw the glow of the campfire, the sky was dark. I bounded into a circle of men, sitting on crates around a fire and eating from metal plates. 2 of them sprang up and reached for rifles. Another held up a lantern. For a second, I was blinded by the brightness. Fear coursed through me as I remembered the gang of men chasing me down the street in Nome. My legs wanted to turn and run, but I thought of Sally. What in tarnation is that? One of the men exclaimed. I barked and whirled in the direction I had come. Put down your rifles, you idiots, a deep voice said. It's a dog. A mighty big dog, another added. A tall man rose from his seat on a crate. Looks like he's wearing a pack. Must be a miner's dog. Boss said he heard rumors someone was panning at the bend. I barked again. The tall man stepped closer, but I darted out of reach. I looked over my shoulder and whined. Follow me, follow me. If it's a miner's dog, where's the miner? The beast wants us to go with him, the tall man said. Could be the miner's injured and the dog's asking for help. Ford Jones, grab your snowshoes and come with me. We work like mules all day, one of the men grumbled. If a man's foolish enough to be out in the snow and cold, he deserves to die. Ooh, it's pretty harsh. this way, I barked until the tall man again gestured to two others. That's an order. Let's see what this fool dog wants. If it's a minor, Carlick might give us a reward for putting a bullet in his head. Or might be the dog will lead us to a steak dinner, another said with a chuckle. With the three men following me, I trotted down the path away from the fire. They carried lanterns and rifles, but since they wore snowshoes and I had already carved a trail, we made fast time. The moon had risen, so I could see the dark lump that was Sally. Whining, I nosed her and then woofed at the men. Hurry, hurry! The tall man bent over and shook Sally's shoulder. Hey, wake up! When there was no response, he peeled back the oilcloth from around her head. Why, it's a young'un, he said. Shrugging off his coat, he wrapped it around her. Kid's alive. Warm, actually. Let's get him back to camp. He bent to pick her up. As he started to lift her, Sally awoke and began to struggle. Who are you? What are you doing? Put me down! What in the world? He lifted his lantern higher. It's a girl! A feisty one. Calm down, miss, the tall man said. I'm Jacob Beamer. We're from the Alaska Gold Mining Company at Point Crossing. Your dog came into camp and wouldn't leave us alone until we followed him. Lucky he did, the second man added, or you'd be at grizzly dinner. Sally's eyes shifted to me. I wagged my tail and lifted my lip in a smile of relief. She smiled back. We need to get you to our fire, Mr. Beamer said. Can you walk? My ankle is twisted. I'll carry you then. Grab her gear, he told one of the men as he hoisted Sally into his arms. They all headed down the trail. Sally's head nodded against Mr. Beamer's shoulder. When we reached the camp, he set her on a rock near the fire. She leaned forward and warmed her hands. Then she unhooked my harness so I could rest too. Huh, sounds like he saved her. When we reached the camp, he set her on a rock. I hugged her side, my gaze anxious. The men had saved Sally, yet they did not seem friendly. I'll get the boss, one of the men said. He hurried over to the log cabin. Mr. Beamer handed Sally a steaming mug of coffee and a plate of beef and beans. She took them with a gracious thank you, but I could see the weariness in her eyes as she ate. When she was half finished, she set the plate in front of me so I could lap up the rest. Delicious. I appreciate your help in the hearty meal, sir, Sally said. Do you know when Mr. Lindblom will be arriving? Midday tomorrow, as always, he replied. Are you going to tell us what you were doing on the tundra in the middle of a storm? I'll tell you what she was doing. A man strode toward us. She was trespassing on my land and panning my gold. My hair bristled. I knew who it was even before the flames lighted his face. Carlick. A growl rose in my throat. Sally clutched my collar as Carlick marched up to us. Crossing his arms, he glared down at her. Right, little missy? You must be the one who's been mining the bend upriver. We heard rumors and sometimes smelled smoke. Did you know that land belongs to my company, which means any gold you found belongs to me? Sally's face paled as she set down the coffee mug. Her eyes darted around the campfire as if hoping for an ally. But suddenly the other miners were looking away, finishing a meal or cleaning equipment. Only Mr. Beamer appeared to be listening. The law says that trespassing and stealing, Carlick went on. The law states that's trespassing and stealing, Carlick went on. We need to take her into town and have her arrested. But Carlick didn't know Sally. My mistress had smudged cheeks, sodden clothes, and brush sticking out of her hair. Still, she slowly stood up in front of him, trying not to wince when she put her weight on her sore leg. I stood too, ready to flee. I knew the meanness in Carlick. Sally didn't. Tipping up her chin, she studied Carlick with a clear glaze. And who are you, sir, to be issuing such threats? Mr. Rustin Carlick, at your service, he grinned smugly. Half owner of the Alaskan Gold Mining Company, which has claimed the Snake River from Nome all the way to heaven. Oh, then you definitely don't own that bend. That camp might be described as purgatory, but never as heaven. Several men chuckled, and Carlick shot them warning looks. Stooping, Sally picked up her pack and mine. I thank your men for carrying me to the fire, fixing me a meal, and letting me warm myself, but my dog and I will be going on our way. Carlick's grin vanished. Wrong, miss. You will not be on your way until you give me any gold you panned from that claim. Sally's brow furrowed. I nudged her side, wanting her to give the man what he wanted so we could be gone. No, sir, I will not, she said. I have heard of your reputation. You and Mackenzie may have evicted the rightful owners from their claims with the help of Judge Noyes. You may have stolen gold from half the prospectors in Nome, but you will not take my hard-earned gains. Throwing back his head, Karlik laughed uproariously. Then in one swift movement, he slapped Sally across the cheek, sending her sprawling sideways. Anger coursed through me. I had run from Karlik and men like him all my life, but none of them had ever hurt Sally. He's probably growling. Karlik reached down and yanked her up. Baring my teeth, I leaped, my jaws clamping on his outstretched arm. Good job, Murphy. All right, last chapter, chapter 15, titled Rescue, August 21st, 1900. Here we go. The force of my hurtling body sent Karlik flying backwards. He flailed at me with his other arm, but I hung on tight. My teeth gripped his wool coat, not flesh. Clamping down harder, I tasted blood. He bellowed like an elk. Suddenly, men were upon me, beating me with sticks and rifle butts. No, Murphy, stop! Let him go before they kill you! Sally threw herself on top of me, receiving several blows on her back. Quit, all of you, Mr. Bremer knocked the men out of the way. Grabbing my collar, Sally pulled me from Karlik. I let go of his arm, but I couldn't stop snarling. I was filled with hatred. Two men helped Karlik to his feet. His face was red with anger as he clasped his arm. Murphy! That dog is Murphy! Karlik spat out the words as furious as I. Grab him! He reached under his coat and tore off his belt. Muzzle him! The men pushed Sally out of the way. She pummeled them with her fist, and one man had to hold her back. It took 4 of them to muzzle me. And before they tightened the belt around my jaw, I drew blood on all of them. So this is Murphy! Karlik narrowed his eyes as he swung around to Sally. Then it appears, little lady, that you have stolen more than gold from me. You have stolen my dog. He is my dog, Sally retorted as she struggled futilely against the man holding her. We'll see about that. Karlik reached for my neck. I growled and the men had to put all their weight on my back to hold me down. His fingers spread my fur by my shoulder. Ha! Just as I thought. There is my C branded in his flesh. Proof that he is my dog and you are a thief. Murphy will never be your dog, Sally snapped. Here, take my gold. Wrestling her arms from the man's grasp, she drew the silver vial from around her neck and threw it at Karlik. It will pay for him. With raised brows, he opened the vial and tapped the gold in his palm. This? This is what you panned from the snake? He snorted. This isn't enough to keep you out of jail, much less pay for the dog. He stays with me. I'll need a strong sled dog this winter, but right now I need to teach him who's the boss around here. Ford, he shouted. Get me my whip. No! Dropping beside me, Sally reached under my collar and dug out the gold nugget. This will pay for Murphy, she held it up. It gleamed in the firelight, and Karlik's eyes grew bright with greed. Lord, that's the biggest nugget I've seen, one of the men gasped. Karlik took the nugget between his fingers and studied it before tucking it in his own pocket. Well, well, you were lucky. This is probably worth hundreds of dollars, which is a shame since you found it on Alaska gold mining land. That means the dog is still mine and you're still a thief. Oh, I hate this guy. Not a very nice man. Ford handed him the whip. Beside me, Sally stared up at him, defiant. Then you will have to whip us both. Perhaps I will, he said, snapping the lash. I rose suddenly to my full height, shaking off the men that held me. A roar rumbled in my throat. I lunged at the men and they scattered like scared sheep. Then I faced Karlik. Even with my jaw strapped shut, I was ready to fight the person I hated. I was ready to protect Sally. 2 men stepped from the shadows and flanked Karlik. One had a white beard, the other was younger with a dark mustache, and both had drawn their guns. I could knock down Karlik. I might even dislodge the belt around my jaw and get in a bite, but I couldn't defeat a gun. I had seen one bullet fell a full-grown elk. Still, I crouched, gathering my strength, ready to attack. I was willing to die protecting Sally. Karlik raised the whip, but the white-bearded man caught his wrist before he could lash out. I wouldn't do that, sir, the older man said, yanking the whip from Karlik's grasp. The other man deftly pulled a gun from under Karlik's coat while aiming his own weapon in the direction of the other men. Arms in the air, the others backed off, except for Mr. Beamer, who came up beside her, the bearded man. Sally gasped. Grandpapa! Launching herself in the air, she flung herself into his arms. You came for me! Sally, the bearded man exclaimed, what are you doing here? Dazed, I sank to the ground. Sally knelt beside me and took off the muzzle. Oh, Murphy, are you all right? I whined and stood, my eyes still on Karlik, but he was no longer paying attention to me. Who are you, and what right do you have to burst into my camp and disarm me? He demanded. Sally's grandpapa faced Carlick. I am Judge William Morrow of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. This is Deputy Marshal Harmon Frank. We traveled to Nome to see firsthand the gross abuse of power that Alaska Gold Mining Company, consisting of you, Mackenzie, and Judge Noyes, has wielded over Nome. It is all legal, Carlick bellowed. You can ask Judge Noyes. We intend to. He pulled out a piece of paper from inside his pocket. The circuit court has ordered that you and Mackenzie are no longer the receivers of any claims. They will revert to their rightful owners. Nobody can take away our claims, Carlick scoffed. Mackenzie has many powerful friends in Washington, D.C. Judge Morrow cut his eyes to Mr. Bremer. Fortunately, we had a man inside your camp who has witnessed you beating and threatening miners reluctant to abandon their claims. His testimony will land you in jail long enough for Washington to learn the truth, and long enough for us to prosecute Mackenzie. Frank, tie his hands tightly. Beamer, you traitor! Carlick lunged at the tall man, but the deputy marshal caught him and secured his hands. I'll take this into possession of the court, Sally's grandpapa said. He reached into Carlick's pocket and plucked out the nugget. That belongs to me, Carlick sputtered. The court will decide, the deputy marshal said. My head swung back and forth as I watched the men argue. Their words flew past me, but I did not care. Sally was safe, which was all that mattered. She kneeled beside me, her hand on my collar, until Beamer and the second man took Carlick away. Then her grandfather stooped beside us. His eyes were grave. You have much to explain, young lady. Your mama has been sick with worry. Mama is still in Nome? Sally exclaimed. Of course. She would never leave you. Luckily, I was on my way to Nome with the matters of the circuit court. When I arrived, I found her distraught. We searched everywhere for you, never realizing you would travel this far. Why on earth did you go off on your own? To find gold, to buy a cabin for Mama so we could stay the winter, Sally explained. She threatened to leave Nome, only I'm not going back to San Francisco. I love it here. Besides, I wasn't on my own. I was with Murphy. Grandpapa shook his head in wonder. The only thing that kept your mama sane was that she knew you were with Murphy. She swore that he would keep you safe. Smiling, he stroked my head, and from what I saw tonight, she was correct. Thank you, Murphy, for keeping my adventurous and foolish granddaughter from harm's way. Standing, he lifted Sally to her feet. She stepped on her bad ankle and made a face. Are you all right? He asked. A slight sprain from the avalanche. His face grew as white as his beard. Avalanche? Don't worry, Murphy dug me out. I had my knife and made a splint as you taught me, and really it was nothing compared to the storm and the wolves. Storm? Wolves? Grandpapa's eyes grew wider. I want to hear the whole story, young lady, but now we must be on our way. There are several boats waiting for us at the dock. I'll have Beamer bring you packs. You may tell me these hair-raising tales as we travel back to Nome, but then we will not speak of them again. We will tell your mother that you stayed with a friendly miner and his family. That would be lying, Grandpapa, Sally said. It would also be sparing your mother's heart. Oh, Mama is not as weak as you think. Using me and her grandfather as support, Sally began to hobble down to the dock. Grandpapa, what about my gold nugget? He sighed. At this point, it belongs to the courts until the matter of the Alaska Gold Mining Company is settled. But how will I buy a cabin for Mama? I will be staying in Nome until Mackenzie and Carlick are prosecuted. That may take all winter. Perhaps there is a comfortable home that a judge could afford. Sally grinned. Perhaps. Then her smile faded. And Murphy? She asked in a small voice as she laced her fingers in my fur. Carlick had him branded with his C. Will the courts uphold his ownership? Gravely he shook his head. I don't know, Sally. She stopped in her tracks. Then I am not going back. Murphy and I will run away. We proved we could survive on the tundra. I would rather live like a wild fox than live without Murphy. Grandpapa rolled his eyes. You are such a stubborn child, quite like your grandmama, so you will not return to Nome unless Murphy is yours. Correct. I guess it could be argued that you've been caring for Murphy for months. And add that Carlick was a cruel owner, Sally chimed in. Grandpapa nodded in agreement. Then by the power of the Circuit Court of San Francisco, I do deem that Murphy, your protector, as well as gold mining and pack dog of Nome, belongs to you, Sally Ann Dawson. Is that good enough? She shook her head. I want it in writing with your official seal. Mama will type it up. She loves Murphy as much as I do.